The sun had just started to rise over the quiet village, painting the sky with soft shades of pink and orange. Birds chirped in the trees, and the scent of fresh earth mixed with the aroma of baking bread from the small ovens in the village homes. Most of the villagers were beginning their day with familiar routines, women carrying water from the well, children running barefoot through the fields, and farmers preparing their tools for the day ahead. It was an ordinary morning, peaceful and calm, the kind that had existed in this village for generations. In the heart of this village, a small square was slowly filling with excitement. Word had spread that a famous maestro, a musician known across the country for his brilliance and high standards, was coming to the village for a special performance. The villagers had heard tales of his concerts in big cities, where people traveled miles just to witness his talent. Now, by some rare chance, he had chosen their small, quiet village as the setting for a music gathering. Many villagers were skeptical, unsure if someone of such stature would really care about their little corner of the world, but curiosity had a way of bringing everyone together. Among the crowd that began gathering in the square was a woman who usually stayed in the background of village life. She was the wife of a farmer, someone who spent her days tending to the fields, taking care of the house, and looking after her family. She had never performed in public or sought attention for herself. Music had always been her private world, something she held close to her heart. In the quiet of the evenings after the chores were done, she would take out her small, worn-out violin and play melodies that only the wind seemed to hear. Her fingers had learned to move over the strings with care and precision, and although no one in the village knew of her skill, she had practiced for years, developing a talent that was entirely her own. As the villagers chattered among themselves, speculating about what the maestro might do, she quietly stepped into the square, holding her violin close. She wasn't seeking recognition. She simply wanted to witness the event, to feel the music in the presence of someone she had always admired from afar. The maestro arrived with a small entourage, his posture commanding yet graceful, a man who seemed to carry both power and elegance in every movement. His eyes scanned the crowd, sharp and discerning, as if measuring the potential of everyone around him in an instant. The crowd fell silent as the maestro began to speak, his voice clear and confident. He talked about the beauty of music, the discipline it required, and the joy it could bring to people's lives. He then issued a challenge, a part of his personality that had become well known in stories and performances alike. He wanted to see raw talent, someone who could rise to the occasion without formal training, someone who could bring emotion and life to a complex piece of music. He invited a volunteer from the crowd to step forward, someone brave enough to face a test that few could meet. Most of the villagers looked at each other nervously, unsure who could take such a challenge. The local musicians, though skilled in their own ways, were intimidated by the maestro's reputation. Whispers spread through the crowd, doubts mixed with excitement. It was a moment that called for courage, a moment that demanded stepping out of comfort zones. And then, almost unnoticed, the farmer's wife took a small step forward. Her hands shook slightly as she held her violin, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. She had never imagined standing in front of so many people, and yet there was something inside her, a quiet determination, a deep love for music, that urged her to take this step. The maestro's eyes fell upon her, and a flicker of surprise crossed his face. He had expected some young prodigy or a confident musician from a nearby town, not a humble farmer's wife who seemed so out of place in such an important moment. Yet there was a calmness about her, a stillness that made her seem grounded despite the sudden attention. The villagers held their breath, some doubting, others silently cheering her on. This was the moment when ordinary life met extraordinary opportunity. She positioned herself, lifting the violin carefully, feeling the familiar weight of the instrument in her hands. She closed her eyes for a brief second, recalling every note she had practiced in the quiet of her home. The world around her faded, leaving only the music, her breath, and the strings beneath her fingers. The first note she played was soft, almost hesitant, yet it carried a warmth that immediately drew the audience in. People leaned forward, sensing that something unusual was about to happen. The maestro, standing with his arms crossed, listened intently, his eyes narrowing in concentration. As she continued to play, the music began to grow, filling the square with a melody that seemed both tender and powerful. Each note reflected years of hidden practice, of evenings spent alone with her music. The villagers, who had never considered her in the realm of public performance, were mesmerized. Children stopped running and watched in awe, elders forgot to speak, and even the local musicians were silent, astonished by the depth of feeling that came from someone they had always overlooked. Her fingers danced over the strings with precision and emotion, weaving a story that transcended words. The maestro's expression changed from curiosity to amazement. He had seen countless performers, some trained in the finest music schools, others naturally gifted. But there was something rare in the way this woman played. It wasn't just technical skill. It was the emotion, the authenticity, the story behind each note. He realized that true talent could be hidden in the most unlikely places, waiting for the right moment to emerge. The challenge he had issued, meant to test others, was now revealing something extraordinary, something that no one in the crowd could have predicted. The farmer's wife continued to play, her confidence growing with each passing note. She no longer felt fear. Instead, she felt a connection with the music, the audience, and the maestro himself. The melody she created was a reflection of her life, simple yet profound, quiet yet full of emotion. By the time she played the last note, the square was completely silent, the kind of silence that comes when people are moved beyond words. It was a moment suspended in time, where ordinary and extraordinary met in perfect harmony. The maestro lowered his head slightly, acknowledging the skill and heart that had just been revealed. The villagers, initially doubtful, erupted into applause, cheering and clapping with genuine admiration. Some had tears in their eyes, others smiled in disbelief, and a few whispered to each other that they had never imagined such talent existed among them. The farmer's wife, usually unnoticed in the daily rhythm of village life, had become the center of attention, her hidden gift finally recognized and celebrated. As she set her violin down, still catching her breath, she felt a mixture of relief and joy. The challenge had been daunting, but it had also been transformative. She realized that courage, when combined with passion, could open doors that had always seemed closed. The maestro stepped forward, offering her a respectful nod and words of encouragement that would stay with her forever. In that moment, the village square, which had begun the day like any other, had become a place of revelation and inspiration, proving that hidden talent, when given a chance, could amaze even the most experienced and discerning eyes. After the first notes had filled the square, a hush settled over the crowd. People could not believe what they had just witnessed. The farmer's wife had accepted the maestro's challenge, and the result had been beyond anyone's expectations. Murmurs ran through the villagers. Some shook their heads, still trying to process the music they had just heard, while others whispered words of admiration, unable to contain their awe. Even the children, who had never paid attention to classical music before, sat quietly, watching every movement of her hands as she held her violin with both grace and authority. The maestro, standing at the center of the square, observed her closely. He had challenged many musicians before, but there was something different about this woman. She had no formal training, no polished certificates, no public reputation. Yet the music she played was flawless and full of emotion. His eyes narrowed slightly, not in doubt, but in deep focus, as he listened to the layers of sound and feeling she conveyed. This was not just skill, it was pure talent, honed quietly and personally over many years, something that formal lessons alone could never teach. Feeling the weight of the moment, the farmer's wife took a deep breath. She had accepted the challenge, yes, but the real test was just beginning. The maestro stepped forward, his voice calm yet commanding. He announced that the piece she had started was only the first stage of the challenge. He would now play a complicated melody alongside her, and she would have to follow, match, and interpret it with the same emotion and depth. It was a task that would have intimidated even the most experienced musicians. The villagers exchanged glances, realizing that the woman who had just amazed them would now face the true test of her hidden talent. She felt her heartbeat quicken. Fear mixed with excitement, but she did not step back. Instead, she lifted her violin again and focused entirely on the music. Her fingers found the strings naturally, recalling each note she had memorized over the years. The maestro struck the first few chords, precise and deliberate. The sound was crisp and demanding, testing her ability to follow his rhythm and style. She responded immediately, her violin echoing his notes perfectly, yet adding her own subtle variations. There was a flow to her playing, a natural rhythm that made the performance feel alive, as if the music itself was breathing. The villagers leaned in closer, completely absorbed. No one dared to speak. Even the wind seemed to pause in respect for the music filling the air. Each note she played carried not only technical skill but a story. Her life in the fields, the long hours of solitude, the quiet moments of practice late at night. All of it was woven into her performance. The villagers, who had known her for years as a simple farmer's wife, were seeing her in a completely new light. They realized that people often carried hidden worlds inside them, waiting for the right moment to emerge. The maestro's expression softened slightly, a rare sign of approval crossing his face. He was a man who had seen brilliance before, yet he had rarely been moved so deeply by someone so unexpected. He continued playing alongside her, testing her with difficult transitions and fast sequences, but she met each challenge with confidence and skill. Her music complemented his perfectly, creating a harmony that left everyone in awe. It was as if two souls were speaking through their instruments, one experienced and refined, the other raw but equally powerful. As the performance continued, the audience began to react. Initially, there were small gasps and whispers of disbelief. Gradually, those reactions grew into applause and cheers, yet carefully timed so as not to disturb the delicate music. Elderly villagers clutched their hands together, children's eyes widened in amazement, and young musicians in the crowd took notes mentally, inspired by her courage and talent. For a moment, the entire village felt united by the music, sharing an emotion that went beyond words. The challenge became more intense as the maestro introduced unexpected variations, testing not only her technical ability but her creativity and adaptability. The farmer's wife responded with calm focus, letting her heart guide her fingers. She added flourishes that were entirely her own, enhancing the melody in ways that surprised even the maestro. Every note carried emotion, sometimes tender, sometimes powerful, sometimes playful, and it drew the audience deeper into the experience. The villagers began to forget the smallness of their lives, the routine of their days, and felt transported by the music into a world of beauty and wonder. The maestro finally slowed his own playing, allowing her to carry the performance alone. She hesitated for a brief second, then began a solo that would become the highlight of the day. Each note resonated with clarity and passion, capturing the attention of every listener. The villagers, who had only known her as a quiet presence in their midst, were now witnessing a transformation. She was no longer just a farmer's wife. She was an artist, a storyteller, a musician who could move hearts with the simplest touch of her bow. The sun climbed higher in the sky, yet no one noticed. Time seemed to stop as her music continued. The maestro, standing silently, was now entirely captivated by her talent. He had set out to test her, yet in doing so he discovered something extraordinary. Her skill was not merely a reflection of technical training, but a testament to years of dedication, passion, and love for music. It was a reminder that talent could thrive in unexpected places, and that true artistry often came from a place of sincerity and emotion. Finally, the performance reached its climax. Her bow danced across the strings with confidence and precision, producing a sound so beautiful that the crowd could hardly breathe. The final note lingered in the air, vibrating softly, before fading into complete silence. The villagers were stunned, unable to contain their emotions. Some wept quietly, others clapped with unrestrained joy, and a few whispered that they had never heard anything so moving in their lives. Even the maestro, known for his discerning taste and high standards, could only stand in awe, nodding his head in deep respect. When the last echoes of music finally faded, the square erupted in applause. People cheered, shouted words of praise, and surrounded her with admiration. She stood there, humble but proud, feeling the warmth of recognition she had never sought. Her hidden talent, long nurtured in solitude, had finally been revealed to the world. The maestro stepped forward, offering his hand and a sincere smile, acknowledging not only her skill but the courage it took to step forward and accept the challenge. In that moment, the farmer's wife realized that sometimes the greatest victories come when ordinary people dare to embrace the extraordinary within them. The applause slowly faded, leaving a calm and almost reverent atmosphere in the village square. The farmer's wife, holding her violin, took a moment to breathe and collect herself. Her hands were slightly trembling, not from fear anymore but from the adrenaline and the overwhelming emotions that came with performing in front of so many people. She had played before, many times in the quiet of her home, but never like this, never under the watchful eyes of an audience and a maestro whose reputation could intimidate anyone. The maestro approached her, his eyes sharp yet kind. He asked if she would play another piece, something that reflected her own interpretation rather than following his guidance. It was a test of creativity, of originality, something even more challenging than matching his performance. The villagers watched, curious and eager to see how she would respond. Some thought she might hesitate, perhaps unsure if she could take the next step, but she nodded quietly, understanding that this was her chance to show who she truly was as a musician. She positioned herself once more, feeling the familiar weight of her violin. She closed her eyes and let her mind drift, recalling the music she had created over the years in solitude. This piece was not about perfection or technical skill alone. It was about expressing everything she had felt in her life. The long days in the fields, the quiet nights under a starlit sky, the joy of small victories, and the deep love she held for her family and her music. She lifted her bow and began to play, and immediately, a different kind of energy filled the square. The melody was gentle at first, delicate and intimate, drawing the listeners in. Then it grew, rising and falling like the hills surrounding the village. Every note she played seemed to tell a story, a narrative that needed no words. Villagers who had never paid attention to music before felt their hearts stirred. Some closed their eyes, letting the sounds wash over them, while others leaned forward, completely captivated. Even the children, usually restless and distracted, remained still, fascinated by the beauty of the music. The maestro listened, visibly impressed. He had heard many musicians in his career, but few could convey emotion as authentically as she did. He watched her fingers move over the strings with precision and grace, but what impressed him most was the way she infused every note with feeling. It was as if her life had been poured into the music, and the villagers could sense it too. They began to murmur among themselves, acknowledging her talent and the courage it took to perform publicly for the first time. As the piece continued, the maestro began to play softly alongside her, adding subtle harmonies to challenge her interpretation and see how she adapted. She responded naturally, weaving her melody with his, creating a harmony that felt effortless yet deeply moving. Each note seemed to echo in the hearts of the audience, building a connection between the musician, the maestro, and the villagers. It was more than just music. It was a shared experience, a moment of unity that transcended the ordinary routines of their lives. The challenge grew more complex as the maestro introduced rapid sequences and sudden changes in tempo. Many musicians would have struggled, but she adapted seamlessly, her mind and hands moving as one with the music. She added subtle embellishments, personal touches that made the performance uniquely hers. The villagers watched in awe, some whispering to each other that they had never imagined such talent could exist in someone they had known all their lives. Even the maestro seemed momentarily speechless, realizing that her skill was not just technical but deeply expressive. As the music reached its crescendo, a powerful wave of emotion swept through the square. The melody soared, filled with energy and passion, yet remained controlled and graceful. The audience felt every beat, every nuance, as if they were living through the story she was telling with her violin. The maestro's eyes glimmered with admiration, acknowledging the rare brilliance before him. He had intended to test her, but now he found himself learning from her performance, witnessing how dedication, passion, and authenticity could surpass even the most formal training. When the final notes rang out and faded into silence, the square remained still for a moment, as if no one wanted to break the spell. Then, slowly, applause began, growing louder and louder until it became a roar of appreciation and joy. People cheered, clapped, and some even wiped away tears, moved by the unexpected depth of talent and emotion. The farmer's wife stood there, her chest heaving slightly, not from exhaustion but from the overwhelming sense of achievement and connection she had just experienced. The maestro stepped forward, his expression filled with respect and admiration. He praised her for her courage, her skill, and the authenticity she brought to the music. He told her that true artistry was not just about technique but about the ability to touch people's hearts, and she had done that effortlessly. The villagers listened in awe, realizing that they had witnessed something extraordinary, a moment that would be remembered for years to come. It was a reminder that greatness could come from the most unexpected places, that hidden talent could flourish in anyone willing to nurture it. Afterward, the villagers approached her, offering words of admiration and congratulations. Some shared their own stories of secret passions and hidden skills, inspired by the farmer's wife's courage to step forward. She smiled quietly, grateful for the recognition but more deeply thankful for the opportunity to share her music. In her heart, she knew this was just the beginning. The challenge had shown her that talent, no matter how hidden, deserved a chance to be expressed, and that sharing it could create bonds and inspire others in ways she had never imagined. As the day drew to a close, the maestro stayed behind, speaking with her privately. He offered guidance, encouragement, and opportunities to perform beyond the village, recognizing that her talent should not remain hidden. She listened carefully, realizing that her life might change in ways she had never dreamed possible. Yet despite the excitement and attention, she remained humble, understanding that her journey was still unfolding. She had faced the challenge, embraced her hidden talent, and amazed the audience, but the real adventure was just beginning. The following days in the village were unlike anything the villagers had ever experienced. Word of the farmer's wife's extraordinary performance spread quickly, and soon, people from neighboring villages began arriving, curious to see the woman who had amazed the maestro and captivated the village square with her hidden talent. The village, usually quiet and unremarkable, now buzzed with excitement, and the atmosphere was filled with anticipation and curiosity. The farmer's wife, however, continued her daily routines with quiet determination. She tended the fields, cared for her home, and supported her family as always. Yet, every day, the villagers would stop by to watch her practice, to ask questions, or simply to marvel at her skill. She welcomed them with humility, never boasting, but always sharing a smile and a kind word. It was clear that her heart remained grounded, even as her music began to attract attention from far beyond the village. The maestro returned after a few days, accompanied by a few assistants who carried additional instruments and sheet music. He wanted to see her progress, to explore the depth of her abilities, and perhaps even guide her in refining her talent. The villagers gathered once again in the square, this time with chairs and small makeshift benches, eager to witness the next chapter of her journey. There was an air of expectation, but also of genuine warmth and admiration. Everyone wanted to see the woman who had turned an ordinary village day into something extraordinary. She prepared for the session quietly, adjusting her violin and taking deep, steady breaths. The maestro, ever observant, began with a few warm-up exercises, testing her range and flexibility, but also gently encouraging her to explore new styles and techniques. She followed his guidance carefully, listening to every suggestion, yet always adding her own touch. Her music was not just a reflection of instruction. It was a mirror of her soul, her emotions, and her life experiences. The villagers watched, fascinated by the blend of discipline and creativity, the harmony between teacher and student, and the authentic expression she poured into each note. As the practice session continued, she began to play a piece of her own choosing, one that she had been composing quietly over the past months. It was a melody full of emotion, capturing the essence of life in the village, the simplicity of daily routines, the quiet joys, and the subtle struggles. The maestro listened intently, nodding in approval, occasionally offering suggestions to enhance the expression or add depth. The villagers were completely absorbed, some holding their breath, some swaying slightly to the rhythm, as if they had been transported to another world by the power of her music. The days passed, and she began performing more regularly in front of larger audiences. People traveled from distant villages just to hear her play, drawn by the stories of the humble farmer's wife who had stunned a world-renowned maestro. Each performance was different, as she continued to explore her creativity and express the emotions that had remained hidden within her for so long. The villagers took pride in her achievements, and their lives, too, began to feel touched by the music. It was no longer just about her talent. It was about the inspiration she provided, showing that anyone could achieve greatness if they pursued their passion with dedication and authenticity. The maestro encouraged her to participate in regional events and gatherings, introducing her to other musicians and composers. She met people who had traveled the world, who had studied in prestigious music schools, yet she held her own with confidence and grace. Each encounter was a learning opportunity, a chance to grow, and she embraced it wholeheartedly. Despite the growing attention, she remained humble, never allowing fame or recognition to change her core values or the simple life she cherished in the village. One day, a particularly large audience gathered in the square, including music enthusiasts, teachers, and even journalists from the nearby town. The farmer's wife felt a mix of nervousness and excitement, but she reminded herself that her music was a gift meant to be shared, not a performance to impress others. As she began to play, the notes flowed effortlessly, a blend of technical mastery and heartfelt emotion. The audience listened in rapt attention, moved by the sincerity and depth of her performance. It was a reminder that music, at its core, is a language of the soul, capable of bridging gaps and touching hearts across generations. The maestro, standing at the edge of the square, watched with quiet pride. He had seen her talent emerge and evolve, and now he witnessed how it impacted others. Her music had become a source of joy, inspiration, and unity for the community. He approached her after the performance, offering words of encouragement and gentle advice, reminding her that the journey of a musician is ongoing, with always more to explore and discover. She listened attentively, grateful for his guidance, yet confident in her own voice and vision. In the weeks that followed, she began to mentor young villagers who showed interest in music. Children and teenagers who had never considered pursuing an art form now found themselves inspired by her dedication and talent. She taught them patiently, encouraging them to express themselves freely, emphasizing that passion and sincerity mattered more than perfection. The village transformed into a hub of creativity, where music became a part of everyday life, and people felt empowered to explore their own hidden talents. Through it all, the farmer's wife remained grounded. She never sought fame or wealth, but rather cherished the connections her music created and the joy it brought to others. The maestro continued to visit occasionally, observing her growth, offering guidance, and celebrating her successes. Their bond grew, rooted in mutual respect and a shared love for music. She had started as a humble woman with a secret talent, but through courage, dedication, and authenticity, she had not only amazed the audience but also inspired an entire community, proving that true talent, when nurtured and shared, can create ripples far beyond the initial moment of discovery. The seasons changed, and the village continued to feel the impact of the farmer's wife's extraordinary talent. What had begun as a single performance in the village square had grown into a movement of inspiration and discovery. People from neighboring towns and villages traveled to hear her play, bringing their own families, friends, and young musicians eager to learn from her. The village, once quiet and ordinary, had become a hub of music and creativity, all because one woman had dared to step forward and share her hidden talent. Despite the attention and growing reputation, she remained humble, continuing to live the life she had always known. She helped in the fields, tended to her family, and performed daily for the villagers and newcomers alike. But now, each performance carried a sense of purpose beyond her own personal expression. She was inspiring others to believe in themselves, showing that talent and dedication could flourish in the most unexpected places. Young children gathered around her, holding small instruments, eager to learn, while teenagers sought her guidance, dreaming of what they could achieve. The maestro returned one afternoon, bringing with him a group of professional musicians from the city. They came to witness her growth and to play alongside her, creating a collaboration that was both challenging and rewarding. The farmer's wife welcomed them warmly, excited to explore new melodies and harmonies. The audience that day was larger than ever, filling the village square with eager faces and expectant hearts. As she lifted her violin, the crowd fell silent, knowing that something extraordinary was about to unfold. The performance began softly, with her leading a simple melody that gradually grew in complexity as the professional musicians joined in. Each note she played was infused with emotion, telling stories of the village, of life, of the quiet beauty in everyday moments. The musicians followed her lead, adapting to her style and flow, creating a harmony that was at once powerful and intimate. The maestro, standing at the edge of the square, watched with pride, knowing that her talent had not only survived exposure to the wider world, but had grown stronger and more refined. Throughout the performance, the villagers watched in awe, some moved to tears, others smiling with joy. They had seen her grow from a quiet woman in the background to a central figure in their community, someone whose music could unite, inspire, and uplift. The young musicians, now confident and motivated, practiced alongside her, learning not just technical skills, but the importance of passion, dedication, and emotional expression. It became clear that her impact extended far beyond her own talent. She was nurturing a new generation, planting seeds that would continue to grow long after the performance ended. As the performance drew to a close, the crowd erupted into applause, cheers, and heartfelt admiration. The farmer's wife lowered her violin, a soft smile on her face, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. She had achieved something remarkable, not for personal fame or recognition, but for the joy of sharing her gift and inspiring others. The maestro approached her once more, this time with an expression of deep respect and gratitude. He told her that her journey had been extraordinary, that she had exceeded all expectations, and that her talent had the power to touch hearts far beyond the village. Following the performance, she was invited to perform at regional music festivals, workshops, and gatherings. Each opportunity was embraced with humility and dedication, and she continued to inspire everyone she met. Her music became a symbol of hope and courage, a reminder that hidden talents, when nurtured and shared, could change lives and communities. Yet she never forgot her roots, always returning to the village, her family, and the simple life that had shaped her character and her passion for music. The villagers, too, had been transformed by her journey. They realized that greatness could emerge from anyone, regardless of background or circumstance. They began to pay more attention to their own hidden skills and passions, encouraging children and adults alike to explore their creativity. The village square, once a place for routine gatherings, had become a space for art, expression, and inspiration. Festivals, performances, and workshops brought people together, all inspired by the courage and talent of one remarkable woman. Years passed, and the farmer's wife continued to play, teach, and inspire. Her story was shared far and wide, becoming a legend of its own. A tale of humility, courage, and the transformative power of music. People traveled long distances to learn from her, to witness her performances, and to hear the story of a woman who had dared to reveal her hidden talent to the world. The maestro remained a mentor and friend, visiting when he could, always impressed by her growth, her generosity, and the impact she had on everyone around her. In her heart, she remained the same woman she had always been, grounded in her love for family, life, and music. But the world around her had changed, and through her courage and dedication, she had shown that talent, passion, and authenticity could create ripples far beyond what anyone could imagine. Her hidden gift, once a quiet secret practiced in the stillness of night, had become a source of joy, inspiration, and transformation for countless lives. And in every note she played, the story of her journey, The ordinary woman who dared to share her extraordinary gift resonated with truth, beauty, and hope.